about 80% of S&P 500 companies that have reported have beat EPS estimates. So I have to wonder how much of this rally has to do with the good news on trade and how much because of earnings.
Generally, it's this optimism around the trade deal solving all problems, being the be-all and end-all. Earnings were good; they were decently strong. But once it took off after the first week, and we heard some good news from J.P. Morgan, the banks, and then the industrials reported, it was already baked in. Once we got all of that, and then it's all just been like, okay, great, we're going to have a signed phase one deal by month end. Let's just bring these, let's take the indices to the next highest level.
Valuations keep moving higher. So what will it take to sustain this rally?
Well, the Fed would have to keep cutting, and the Fed isn't going to keep cutting. I mean, there is dovishness, but we're not going to have a cut in December. And so the reason we have this technology rally, it all just has to do with pure valuation.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app. Or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Stocks are rising in Europe along with S&P 500 futures after China said it agreed with the U.S. to roll back tariffs on each other's goods in phases as they work toward a trade deal. Havens including treasuries and gold are slipping. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up about 14 points. Dow futures up 150. NASDAQ futures up 46. The DAX in Germany's up 0.8%. 10-year Treasury down 11/32. The yield 1.85%. The yield on the 2-year 1.63%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1.25% or 71 cents at 57.06 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.5% or $7.10 at 14.86 an ounce. The euro 1.1083 against the dollar. British pound 1.2870. And the yen is at 109.10. Today we are watching for the weekly report on initial jobless claims at 8:30 Wall Street time, along with consumer credit at 3. We also get a rate decision from the Bank of England, and Disney is among companies scheduled to report earnings today. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. The White House is adding to its communications operations as House Democrats prepare for the first public hearings in its impeachment inquiry set for next week. The first witness expected to appear is the top U.S. diplomat in Ukraine, William Taylor. He has told lawmakers in private that he understood President Trump proposed a quid pro quo with Ukraine regarding U.S. security assistance for commitment to investigate Joe Biden and the Democrats. President Trump slammed House Democrats after word that the impeachment inquiry will go public. During a rally in Louisiana, Trump called it a hyper-partisan impeachment witch hunt. In the NBA, the Knicks lost. The Warriors and Wizards also lost. In the NHL, the Rangers, they were losers. Global News, 24 hours a day. I'm sorry, the Rangers won. I apologize. Global News, 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok. Yeah, I almost did. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
You're going to hear about the Rangers winning. Thank you, Michael. It is 5:19 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak, and Ben Emmons is with us now, Managing Director for Global Macro Strategy at Medley Global Advisors. Seems investors feel like the latest developments on the U.S.-China trade front are a win, with this word from the Chinese that it's agreed with the U.S. to roll back tariffs if they reach a phase one trade deal. That's still a pretty big if, though, isn't it?
It is, and good morning for having us again.
Sure.
Because if you read the news correctly, it actually says the additional tariffs, and that points to the escalation of the trade war that took place between May 5th and August 23rd, when Trump, through different tweets, announced higher tariffs right from then existing levels. So, in reading the news more carefully, I think the rally is sort of explained by this, right? You have a modest risk-on rally here because you get no further escalation of the trade war, and whatever the escalation is taking place will be taken back over phases. But we're not yet at the end game of this, right? Which means zero tariffs, zero trade barriers. That's something I think perhaps for the future, but not right now.
When do you see that happening? I mean, that's still a pretty big question mark, isn't it?
Yeah, that would be a substantial change of trade between two countries if that actually happens. Of course, very positive, right? Because zero barriers means basically that U.S. companies can invest fully in China and offer products there to the Chinese middle class, right? Which has been long desired, right? Now that I think is still far away. You know, it would mean not only phase one completed, but ultimately you're getting the structural issues resolved. That would more take towards into the second term of if Trump is reelected or any other president for that matter. So markets, I think, are pricing in that phase one will be completed, and then there will be a relief on the additional tariffs that took place, which would be a modest economic relief.
What do you see that economic relief looking like in terms of business confidence if we do start to see those additional tariffs begin to roll back in phases?
So there's some interesting points happening here that you know, you see a little bit turn in some of the forward-looking indicators for PMI, and particularly in the manufacturing PMI over the last sort of month or so. It does point that there's some activity happening on the premise that this trade deal is happening, and therefore confidence picks up. And so we're getting again what we call the green shoots, which happened earlier this year too. So I would think that manufacturing has some boost here into the first quarter, and then more of a boost will happen next year when the tariffs really are rolled back and you're seeing a bigger relief from the economy. So it will take still 2 quarters to see the real impacts from this.
It should pass along another red headline just crossing the Bloomberg terminal now. The Chinese official Xinhua news agency is reporting Beijing is studying removal of curbs on U.S. poultry imports. Yet another development as we head toward this phase one trade deal. How do you see that? I mean, does the mood music continue to sound positive to you?
Yeah, I think, you know, again, if you look at this sort of headlines, it indicates that they're just making these step-by-step progress on sensitive import areas, right? So poultry is obviously another sort of maybe for Trump a politically sensitive area, given farming and so forth. That is why what's initially agreed upon, part of the agricultural purchases component of this phase one. So again, pointing to you had phase one completion. Where the market is trading, tipping into the start of phase two, and I think this is where the markets are now.
Our last minute or so here, what does all this mean for U.S. monetary policy? The Fed has given pretty strong indications that it's going to be on hold, at least for the next several months.
Yeah, I think if you want to put this actually more in a global perspective, because you have not only that it's the Federal Reserve in play here, but also the other major central banks. And indeed, the market is priced for most of the central banks that are now at neutral. There's some QE, there's some stimulus in the system, and that's where it is at the moment. There's not going to be more of it coming at this time. Where the real change could happen is in the countries where central banks move much more further ahead than the Fed or the ECB. There's particularly the Asia-Pacific region, like Australia and New Zealand, that are more hit by the trade war, where I think the calculus could change if the pickup in trade happens next year, and those countries see a revival of economic growth rate, and then monetary policy could change there. Whereas in the developed world, it probably will stay the same for the next few quarters.
Ben Emmons, always good getting your insights. Thanks again for being with us. Ben Emmons is Managing Director for Global Macro Strategy at Medley Global Advisors. And again, reiterating the latest red headline to cross the Bloomberg terminal, China's Xinhua news agency is reporting that China is studying removal of curbs on U.S. poultry imports. S&P futures are higher now by 14 points. Dow futures a gain of 152. NASDAQ futures higher by 46 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stock futures are bouncing higher. The Chinese Ministry of Commerce said China and the U.S. agreed to roll back tariffs on each other's goods in phases as they work toward a trade deal between the two sides. S&P futures up 15, NASDAQ futures up 50, Dow futures up 156 points. Crude oil is also climbing up almost 1.4% and just above $57 a barrel. Here in the U.S. today, we'll get a check on the job market. The weekly report on first-time unemployment claims comes out before the opening bell. Economists economists expect to see shorter unemployment lines with claims down by 3,000. Another batch of quarterly earnings comes out today. We hear from SeaWorld, Keurig, Dr. Pepper, and Disney. Shares of Qualcomm are moving higher before the opening bell after the company delivered a stronger than predicted forecast for the current quarter, indicating that smartphone demand fueled by new wireless technology may be picking up slowly after a prolonged downturn. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's environment of market volatility, Pershing's Prime Services is well positioned to support the needs of hedge funds and other alternative investment managers. Whether it's customized financing or securities lending solutions, platform access, or business expansion, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and agile enough to meet your evolving demands. Pershing helps to solve the needs of clients by advocating for them, providing unwavering strength, deep supply, and award-winning service that is at the core of everything we do. Find out what sets Pershing's prime brokerage team apart.
Learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers offered by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Visit our website at Pershing.com. Pershing LLC, member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
It's another Thursday morning, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and enjoy stunning white sand and crystal blue sea. Fly from London Gatwick to the Maldives with British Airways from £300 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
They don't chant your name when you give blood or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
At Argos, get them the toys they're dreaming of this Christmas. Save 20% when you spend £20 or more on toys with code TOYS20, including top brands like Peppa Pig and Lego. Enjoy same-day home delivery 7 days a week. With Argos, you're good to go. Offer ends the 12th of November, subject to availability. Exclusions apply. Delivery conditions apply. Order by 6 p.m, 90% UK coverage.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Ladies and gents, may I introduce a magical number? 25! Oh yes, 25 UK millionaires guaranteed in this Friday's Euro Millions.
Euro Millions, celebrating 25 years of the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Some people find love par chance. Me, I found love in my Citroën dealership. I looked at new Citroën C5 Aircross SUV with advanced comfort seats, and boom! They say, Emmanuel, you also get 0% finance over 48 months. I say, I love it. Visit your local Citroën dealership and find love too. New Citroën C5 Aircross SUV, the most comfortable SUV.
Citroën. Citroën UK Limited is a credit broker, not a lender. Conditional sale. Terms, eligibility criteria and return conditions apply. A guarantee may be required. PSA Finance UK Limited.
Hello? This is Dustin. I found something. Is anybody there?
We hear you, Dustin. With Sky Q, you can easily catch up on epic Netflix shows like Stranger Things and then watch award-winning Sky originals like Chernobyl. Get Sky and Netflix all in one place on Sky Q for one surprisingly low price. Just £25 a month. Visit sky.com and join today. Offer ends November 14th. 18-month minimum terms. Prices may change during contract. Requires Sky Q box connected to broadband. Set up from £20. Further terms apply.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It's 5:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We're just about 4 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures and European stocks are gaining after another step forward in trade negotiations between the U.S. and China. For the very latest, we go live now to Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
And good morning, Karen. China's Commerce Ministry says both sides have conditionally agreed to remove tariffs in phases, potentially providing a roadmap toward de-escalating the trade war. A spokesman says if China and the U.S. reach a Phase 1 deal, both sides should roll back existing tariffs in the same proportion simultaneously, based on the content of the agreement. Separately, China's Xinhua news agency is saying Beijing is considering removing curbs on U.S. poultry imports. Live in New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. In Europe, we get a policy decision and updated economic forecasts from the Bank of England today. The central bank is expected to keep rates on hold ahead of elections next month.
In Germany, we have data showing industrial production continues to worsen. German output fell 0.6% in September, with manufacturing fueling the decline.
And earnings out of Germany don't paint a much better picture. Shares of Commerzbank are down more than 1% after the bank cut its outlook for the year. The lender says negative rates and higher taxes are hurting income.
In Italy, shares of Unicredit are up 4%. The bank posted a 26% gain in profit as income from trading and fees offset weak lending margins.
Here in the U.S., shares of Roku are down almost 13% in early trading. Third quarter results and forecasts for the fourth quarter both fell short of estimates.
Shares of Fossil Group are down nearly 30%. The watchmaker posting a surprise loss and lowered its outlook for the year.
Qualcomm is up more than 5% in early trading after the chipmaker's outlook topped predictions. Here with more is Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
Its report indicates that smartphone demand may be picking up after a prolonged slump. Investors have been waiting to see whether Qualcomm, now in its fifth year of revenue declines, can parlay its claim of leadership in 5G wireless technology into sales growth. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Charlie, thank you. S&P futures are higher this morning, up 14 points. Dow futures up 153. And NASDAQ futures up 46. And we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. The DAX in Germany is up 0.8%. 10-year Treasury down 12/30 seconds, yield 1.86%. Yield on the 2-year 1.63%. NYMEX crude oil up 1.2% or 67 cents at $57.02 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.5% or $7.90 at $14.85.30 an ounce. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
All right, thank you, Karen. It's 5:33 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr is here to tell us more of what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. Rudy Giuliani says his work with Ukraine was done solely as a defense attorney for President Donald Trump. Bloomberg's Ed Baxter has the story.
It came in the form of a tweet. The investigation I conducted concerning 2016 Ukrainian collusion and corruption was done solely as a defense attorney to defend my client against false charges that kept changing as one after another were disproven. But now this seems to undercut the administration claims that he was advancing U.S. foreign policy. Lawmakers have been interviewing current and former administration officials in efforts to clarify the nature of Giuliani's interactions with the U.S. and Ukrainian officials. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
President Trump traveled to Monroe, Louisiana to muster votes for Republican Eddie Risponi in the governor's race against incumbent Democrat John Bel Edwards. Reacting to the impeachment inquiry, President Trump says his critics working with the media have launched a destructive, hyper-partisan witch hunt.
The radical left Democrats are trying to rip our nation apart.
The top U.S. diplomat in Ukraine has told lawmakers in private that he misunderstood President Donald Trump proposed a quid pro quo with Ukraine. or understood rather. Now he's expected to repeat that testimony in the impeachment inquiry's initial public hearings next week. The diplomat William Taylor will be the first to testify. President Trump is expected to hire a pair of new aides dedicated to responding to the House's expanding impeachment investigation. According to two people familiar with the plan, former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi and Tony Sayegh, a former Treasury Department spokesman, are expected to join the White House communications team. Under a strong security presence, a remote farming community in northern Mexico is preparing to hold the first funerals today for some of the 9 American women and children killed by drug cartel gunmen. Brian LeBaron, a relative of the victims, says Mexico's president should accept President Trump's offer to help wage war on Mexican drug cartels.
The president of Mexico should put his pride aside and accept the international help.
At least 1,000 visitors are expected for the funerals today. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. 5:35 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashauer.
Nathan, it was New York versus Detroit. Knicks and Pistons, Rangers and Red Wings. The Knicks lost 122-102. They trailed by only 2 in the third quarter when Markieff Morris, who was playing against his twin brother, hit a three-pointer and was fouled. A flagrant foul on Julius Randle, so free throw plus possession. The Pistons scored on that. Knicks coach David Fizdale on the sequence.
That's a tough one. It's tough to weather a 6-point play. That's actually the first time I've ever seen that since I've been coaching. So, but, you know, we made a lot of mistakes defensively, but these are things that we can correct.
We'll see. Knicks are an NBA worst 1-7. They've lost 8 straight to Detroit. They're in Dallas tomorrow facing their old friend Kristaps Porzingis at the Garden. Rangers, 3 goals in the second period, 2 more in the third. 5-1 win over the Red Wings. This is a young Ranger team with a 37-year-old goalie, Henrik Lundqvist.
I think tonight we did a much better job of doing that. Trust our structure, and then we have the skill to use it when there's an opportunity and not force it. And tonight I think we just worked hard. We wait for their mistakes, and then we took advantage of it. So it's great to see we learned from last game where it kind of was the opposite going on for us.
The Rangers play again tonight at Carolina. College basketball season opening win for St. John's and its new coach Mike Anderson by 30 over Mercer. Virginia opened defense of its national championship, a 48-34 win at Syracuse. The Orange shot 24%. Rutgers looking for a new football coach and talking to a former coach, Greg Schiano, Jersey native, coached the Scarlet Knights for a decade. They went 11-2 one season. Reportedly, he's interested in returning, but only if the school improves its facilities. With the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashauer. Nathan?
Thanks, John. It's 5:37 on Wall Street, and the latest edition of Bloomberg Business Week is on newsstands now. It's the special New Economy issue. It includes a conversation on privacy issues around big data with the chairman of India's leading IT outsourcer. Jeff Muskus worked on the story for Bloomberg Business Week.
The differentiator here in the industry's mind is how much more they can figure out about a given company's customer base, but without particularly going into a ton of detail about how they get that information.
Read more about this and other stories in the New Economy edition of Bloomberg Business Week on newsstands now and online at businessweek.com. Terminal customers can subscribe to the magazine at MAG Go and listen to Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly weekdays at 2 p.m. Wall Street time right here on Bloomberg Radio. It's 5:38 on Wall Street. Time now for the Tri-State Business Report with Bloomberg's Ed Corey. Good morning, Ed.
Morning, Nathan. Activist investor Blue Harbor Group is bullish on Madison Square Garden as the iconic brand prepares to spin off its sports teams. Blue Harbor Chief Executive Officer Clifton Robbins says the owner of the Knicks and the Rangers has options to dramatically boost its share price. A developer of some of Manhattan's costliest and tallest condo towers is shifting to the opposite end of the housing spectrum, building affordable communal rentals. Simon Koster says he sees a bigger opportunity to serve those shut out of the luxury boom. Some New Jersey state lawmakers are pushing for a constitutional amendment to ban new power plants fired by either natural gas, coal, or oil. The bipartisan plan was introduced over the summer, but its backers are hoping to put the question before voters statewide no later than 2021. That's your Bloomberg Tri-State Business Report. I'm Ed Corey. Nathan?
Thanks, Ed. It's 5:39 on Wall Street. Bloomberg Radio is on the air from San Francisco to New York, London to Hong Kong. Let's check in with our global news team for some of the top stories heard on our 300 affiliate radio stations around the world.
I'm Steve Potisk, and on KNX in Los Angeles, we're talking about Netflix plan to spend even more on original shows to combat a growing list of streaming rivals.
I'm Tom Busby, and on WBZ in Boston, I'll be reporting on strong revenues for the Encore Boston Harbor Casino's first full quarter.
I'm Gina Cervetti, and on WFLA in Orlando, we're previewing Disney earnings.
I'm Caroline Hepker on Bloomberg DAB Digital Radio in London. We're reporting on the sudden resignation of the Labour Party's deputy leader just as the election campaign begins.
I'm Courtney Donahoe on WHAS in Louisville. Toyota's quarterly profit topped analyst estimates thanks to healthy sales of RAV4s.
I'm Ed Corey on WOAI in San Antonio. I'm reporting regulators have rejected an audit of how Boeing's proposed software fix for the 737 MAX was being developed.
And those are some of the stories our 2,700 Bloomberg journalists and analysts are working on this morning around the world. Another item we're watching, corporate earnings on the way. We get results from about 40 companies in the S&P 500 today, including Walt Disney. Bloomberg customers can check the full earnings calendar on the terminal. Just type ACDR GO. S&P futures are higher by almost 13 points right now. Dow futures a gain of 147. NASDAQ futures higher by just about 44 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
The lifeblood of tech startups isn't just money. It's executive and technical skills, the kind of skills that companies need to build real products, and the skills that venture capitalist Chris Sugden of Edison Partners sees in the graduates that are coming out of New Jersey Institute of Technology.
The amazing thing about NJIT is their graduates, they have multiple offers on average, not just one. They're coming out with real skill sets that are immediately hireable and available to them. I think we see an understanding by the faculty and administration at NJIT that we've got to train and educate the whole student, not just their, one side of their brain. And I do think that's sort of part of the DNA today. There's practical and there's sort of academia, and merging those two together and understanding that if we're going to have our young people go get great jobs and have great successful careers, they've got to have both sides of their brain activated. And I think we see that with NJIT.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich, no. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
This is your Bloomberg.
We just got back from a beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. Then it was time for glow-in-the-dark mini-golf. I got a hole-in-one. Well, 3. I'm a bit rusty, okay? There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
It's another Thursday morning. Yet another windy day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and explore tropical rainforests. Fly from London Gatwick to Costa Rica with British Airways. From £218 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Cold Thursday mornings like this are cruel. You cough, you splutter, so does your car. Its battery dead. Killed by an icy claw. Will anyone stand up to winter? Yes, you. Come to Halfords. We fit new batteries on the spot from just £15, and we're open late 7 days a week. See halfords.com for opening hours here in Chiswick. Ready for the cold snap? Ready for anything. Halfords, for life's journeys.
Batteries sold separately. Selected vehicles only in most stores.
It's never nice missing out. But millions are doing just that by having a current account that doesn't pay them any interest on their hard-earned money. TSB is here to help. They offer interest to all their Plus account customers for no monthly fee. So if you're one of the millions of people who are missing out, talk to TSB. Terms and conditions apply.
News 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Inside new transcripts released in the impeachment inquiry, America's top diplomat in Ukraine told lawmakers he had a clear understanding there was a quid pro quo of military aid in exchange for a corruption probe in President Trump's dealings with Ukraine. The president, meanwhile, focused on the ISIS fight in a rally in Louisiana last night.
Our message to these bloodthirsty savages is clear. You don't stand a chance against the righteous might of the United States military. Because America is winning again, and America is respected again.
The president campaigning for the GOP candidate in the year's final gubernatorial contest. New progress being hinted at in trade talks with China. The Chinese commerce minister says negotiators from Washington and Beijing have agreed to cancel increases in tariffs in what he calls a phased effort. I'm Jan Johnson.
If you're at the top of your profession, you're listening.
Are those gains all going to the elite?
Bloomberg Surveillance.
Does it spread beyond manufacturing?
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell. Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Stocks are rising in Europe along with S&P 500 futures after China said it agreed with the U.S. to roll back tariffs on each other's goods in phases as they work toward a trade deal. Havens including treasuries and gold slipped, and the French 10-year yield turned positive for the first time since July 16th. And we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 13 points. Dow futures up 149. NASDAQ futures up 43. The DAX in Germany is up 0.7%. 10-year Treasury down 15/32, yield 1.87%, yield on the 2-year 1.64%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1.1% or 60 cents at $56.94 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.5% or $7.80 at $14.85.30 an ounce. The euro 1.1083 against the dollar, British pound 1.2866. And the yen is at 109.15. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, Rudy Giuliani says his work with Ukraine was done solely as a defense attorney for President Trump. It seems to undercut the administration's claim that he was advancing U.S. foreign policy. Democrats are preparing to launch public impeachment hearings next week, intending to bring to life closed-door testimony and lay out a convincing narrative of presidential misconduct by Donald Trump. First to testify will be the top diplomat in Ukraine, William Taylor, whose private testimony was made public in transcripts. Taylor told investigators his understanding that there was a blatant quid pro quo with Trump holding up military aid to Ukraine as it faced threats from Russia. In the NBA, the Knicks lost, the Warriors and Wizards also lost, and the NHL, the Rangers won. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It's 5:49 on Wall Street. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. Columnist Mark Gilbert joins us from our London bureau with a look at European banking this morning and how U.S. firms may be eating their lunch, so to speak, and how Germany's finance minister is looking to change that. Mark, thanks for being with us. But first, explain for our audience just what it is we're talking about here.
German Finance Minister Olaf Scholz said earlier this week that Europe needs to complete a banking union, and the stumbling block to that has been the idea of common deposit insurance across the countries in the European Union. So it's a bit of a surprise. What's driving it, though, is the fact that we don't have a European banking champion that can compete with either the US banks or with the UK banks in the key capital markets activities where companies raise money either by doing equity issuance or by selling bonds. European companies have been more reliant on bank loans than either UK or US companies for several years now. And so what the German finance minister is driven by is the need for more capital markets activity and the idea that the European banks need to be at the forefront of that capital raising activity for companies in their own backyards. Otherwise, there's a risk that the fragmented market means they'll be starved of capital, especially if Brexit denies them access to the pool of capital that's available in London.
Well, what had kept Berlin from agreeing to this idea of a banking union up to now?
Well, it's the mutualisation of debt issue. It's the idea that he doesn't want German taxpayers basically having to bail out Italian banks if Italian bonds fall. So one of the stumbling blocks to this is the idea that at the moment banks don't have to set aside capital against their government bond holdings. Scholz is keeping that as a red line. That might be a problem to getting banking union ahead, but in terms of capital markets union, there's clearly a need for progress on this. And so him writing in the FT this week and appearing at a Bloomberg markets conference shows he's willing to give some ground to actually get this deal going.
And it seems as though there's quite a bit more urgency behind this push. Now, what's driving it specifically? Is it the threat of Brexit? Is it just that Wall Street banks have asserted their dominance so much more now? What?
Both of those things, but also, European banks aren't that healthy. If you look at their market share of equity underwriting, Deutsche Bank, which was the European banking champion for Europe for several years, it's down to a 2% market share of equity fundraising in Europe. That's half of what it was 3 years ago. BNP Paribas of France, again, less than 2% market share. The US, the big four US banks, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Goldman and Citigroup, they've got 40% of that market. So clearly European banks are just not able to compete. Their capital position is weak. Their competitiveness is just non-existent. And so there's a need for cross-border mergers. And one of the things that a banking union, a capital markets union is supposed to encourage, and Scholz acknowledges this, is more cross-border mergers. And that's desperately needed to create a European banking champion that can compete with those US and UK banks to raise capital for European companies.
Well, if those cross-border mergers were to be made easier, who's poised to emerge potentially as that European banking champion?
My own bet is Unicredit. Unicredit of Italy. It's sorting out its non-performing loans. Its leader, Jean-Pierre Mustier, sees himself as basically a saver of European banking. And it is probably the strongest horse in the glue factory in Europe. And so if you could get the barriers to those cross-border mergers down, I think Unicredit could emerge as a big winner.
And with the German finance minister now showing a bit more willingness to concede on this, does this make a European banking union more of a done deal now? What further hurdles might there be?
Oh, there's still a long way to go, but at least it shows a willingness to acknowledge that progress needs to happen. The big issue is this issue of government bonds. European banks tend to own a lot of domestically issued government debt in the market in which they operate. The idea that they would have to set aside capital against that, while it intuitively makes sense, because as we know, government bonds are not risk-free assets. For a country like Italy, for example, because so much of its debt is owned by the local banks, them having to set aside capital might diminish their appetite for that debt, which again makes it harder for the country to raise finance. And so that is still a big obstacle that will need to be addressed before this banking union and the capital markets union can be put in place.
Bloomberg opinion columnist Mark Gilbert, thank you. Read more at Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the terminal. Karen.
All right, Nathan, thank you. It is 5:54 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Law Report. Let's get to the legal stories we're watching this morning from Bloomberg's Joan Doniger.
The Labor Department confirms it misused more than $1 million to pay for a White House-directed apprenticeship program after repeatedly telling Congress it would not spend already existing money to fund. The Supreme Court will hear a huge case involving environmental law next Wednesday. Oral arguments are scheduled in the case that could set limits on the Clean Water Act. And President Trump wants proposals in the next 60 to 90 days that would address how to give people the ability to comparison shop for medical services.
Bloomberg Law. Everything you need on one legal research platform. Guidance, analysis, and Bloomberg Market Intelligence. Find out more at BloombergLaw.com.
And now another legal story we're watching involves a case over a traffic stop that's been being heard at the Supreme Court. A Kansas man claims police violated the Fourth Amendment when an officer pulled him over after running the license plate on his truck and discovering its registered owner had his driver's license revoked. For more on oral arguments on the case, June Grasso speaks with Bloomberg Law editor Jordan Rubin.
In this case, the registered owner's license was revoked, and the officer stopped him driving his truck. What was the claim by the defense?
So even though it was actually the registered owner of the car, Charles Glover, who was in fact driving the car, Glover raised the argument in a suppression motion that there wasn't a good enough reason for the officer to think that it was Glover before he pulled him over. That's because all the officer did before pulling Glover's truck over was just run the license plate, at which point it showed that the registered owner, Glover, had his license revoked. But the officer didn't do anything more than that. He didn't try to confirm that it was Glover's identity first or observe a traffic violation or anything like that. It was just the simple fact of Glover having his license revoked. And Glover argues that that's simply not enough to amount to reasonable suspicion under the Fourth Amendment.
So what should the officer have done? He's not supposed to stop the truck unless what? What else was he supposed to do?
Right. So that's the million-dollar question that came up at the argument that Glover's lawyer didn't necessarily have a specific answer to, other than to say there needs to be something done. Obviously, one thing that was brought up was trying to visually check to see if it appears to be the same person. Say, if the registered owner appears to be a 60-year-old man, if it looks like the driver is someone like that, then that would be an example of one other fact that, according to the defense's argument, would amount probably to reasonable suspicion. The bottom line was they said it at least has to be something more than just the fact of the registered owner having their license revoked.
Chief Justice John Roberts seemed particularly exasperated. He said, do you think it's totally random who the driver is? In other words, it's registered to Fred Jones, but it could be anybody in the world?
Yeah, so Chief Justice Roberts usually keeps a pretty even keel. He got sort of almost agitated during the argument in a back and forth with Glover's attorney, Sarah Harrington. Roberts seemed to really buy into the state's common sense argument, and so he was getting frustrated in terms of trying to search for an answer of what more exactly was the officer supposed to do, including the question of what sort of probability can we attach to whether the registered owner is in fact the driver.
And that's Bloomberg Law editor Jordan Rubin speaking with Bloomberg's June Grasso. Catch more of that interview plus analysis of the latest legal news by subscribing to the Bloomberg Law podcast or downloading the show at Bloomberg.com/podcasts. And attorneys can find exceptional legal research and business development tools at BloombergLaw.com. And Bloomberg Daybreak continues. This is Bloomberg.
It's another Thursday morning. Yet another windy day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and explore tropical rainforests. Fly from London Gatwick to Costa Rica with British Airways from £218 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Ladies and gents, may I introduce a magical number? 25!
Oh yes, 25 UK millionaires guaranteed in this Friday's Euro Millions.
Euro Millions, celebrating 25 years of the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Thursday, November 7th, 2019. Coming up this hour.
Global stocks gain as the U.S. and China take another step forward in trade talks.
Data out of Germany show more weakness in the manufacturing sector.
The Bank of England makes its last policy decision before elections.
Shares of Qualcomm surge as the chipmaker predicts a pickup in smartphone demand.
The top U.S. diplomat in Ukraine will testify publicly next week in the impeachment inquiry. Plus, another Republican rally for President Trump. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. It was New York versus Detroit. The Knicks lost to the Pistons. The Rangers beat the Red Wings. St. John's won its season opener.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow.
And I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak brought to you by Interactive Brokers. Their margin loans start at 3.4% and decrease for larger loan values. Rates subject to change. Learn more at ibkr.com/compare.
And U.S. futures are gaining this morning, 6:01 on Wall Street. And we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 14 points. Dow futures up 152. NASDAQ futures up 45. The DAX in Germany is up 0.7%. The CAC in Paris is up 0.2%. And the FTSE 100 is up about the same. 10-year Treasury down 15.30 yield 1.87%. The yield on the 2-year 1.64%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1.3% or 72 cents at $57.07 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.7%, down $10.30 at $14.8280 an ounce. The euro 1.1089 against the dollar. British pound 1.2865 and the yen 109.18. Nathan.
All right, Karen, thanks. The gains we're seeing for U.S. futures and stocks overseas come after another step forward in trade negotiations between the U.S. and China. For the very latest, we go live now to Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
And Nathan, China and the U.S. have agreed to roll back tariffs in phases. That's according to China's Ministry of Commerce, which says the amount of tariff relief that would come in the first phase would depend on the content of that agreement. If confirmed by the United States, an agreement to roll back tariffs in phases could provide a roadmap to de-escalate the trade war. And separately, China's Xinhua news agency says Beijing is also considering removing curbs on U.S. poultry imports. Live in New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. Equity, bond, and currency markets all moved on the trade news. The yen hit its weakest level of the session. Treasuries declined, and U.S. futures took a sharp turn higher. Mark Cudmore is global market strategist for Bloomberg.
The talk here of actually a schedule for lowering tariffs is potentially brilliant news. We don't have concrete details yet. We don't have this deal. And of course, there may be some more kind of ebbing and flowing in this story before this deal gets signed. So I think that the market, this is good news. And I'm not trying to say negate this good news, but I don't think it's going to continue higher till we get more details. I think we'll hold on to the gains, but ultimately the investors will want to see some concrete points. And that will be A, when this deal will be signed, and B, a schedule for when those tariffs will be removed and how quickly.
The two sides continue to negotiate where and when a Phase 1 deal would be signed. Iowa and Alaska have already been rolled out as sites for a meeting.
Now, before the news on trade, stocks in Asia had been little changed, but optimism on talks pushed equities there into positive territory. Bloomberg's Juliet Sally joins us from Singapore with details. Good morning, Juliet.
Good morning, Nathan and Karen. Well, those reports saw the Hang Seng Index, which was still trading, turn around, and the CSI 300 on the mainland close higher by 0.2%. Shares in Taiwan, though, had already closed. They fell as semiconductor players lost ground, and Australian stocks outperformed as the nation recorded an expansion of its trade surplus and financial stocks lifted on earnings. In Singapore, I'm Juliet Sally, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Julia, thank you. Meanwhile, China considering a wave of bank mergers to stabilize the nation's small lenders. Sources tell us financial regulators are discussing plans to restructure or merge problematic banks with less than $14 billion in assets.
In Europe, we get a policy decision and updated economic forecasts from the Bank of England today, followed by a press conference by Governor Mark Carney. Here with a preview from London is Bloomberg's Lucy Meakin.
The Bank of England will probably keep interest rates on hold and cut its growth and inflation forecast as Brexit questions continue to plague the economy. The newly renamed Monetary Policy Report will provide the central bank's latest thinking as the UK faces political chaos, lacklustre growth and no clarity on how its divorce from the EU will be resolved. It will also be the last chance for journalists to grill Governor Mark Carney before he goes into a quiet period ahead of the December election. In London, Lucy Meakin, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Lucy, thank you. In Germany, we have data showing industrial production continues to worsen. German output fell 0.6% in September, with manufacturing fueling the decline. At the same time, the EU warns things could get worse for Europe. The European Commission is cutting its euro area growth forecast for the next 2 years.
And earnings out of Germany don't paint a much better picture. Shares of Commerzbank are higher by 1.4% now after the bank cut its outlook for the year. Jonathan Tice is senior bank analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence.
Germany quite clearly continues to be a horrible place to do business. Commerzbank is sort of an M&A play. I would be surprised if it is still independent in 2 years' time. People look at Commerzbank and think fundamentals pretty horrible, but if I wanted to buy an M&A play, it is one of the ones that's top of the list.
Just yesterday, Germany's finance minister reopened debate on consolidation with a proposal to break a deadlock in discussions over European banking integration. That is seen as a necessary step before deals can take place.
In Italy, Unicredit is out with earnings that beat estimates. The bank posted a 26% gain in profit as income from trading and fees offset weak lending margins. Unicredit shares are up about 7% in Milan.
Here in the U.S., shares of Qualcomm are higher by almost 6% in early trading. The chip maker's out with a forecast that beat estimates and says smartphone demand will pick up next year. Ian King has more from our Bloomberg 960 newsroom in San Francisco.
They're saying the smartphone market is going to return to growth again. As much as 1.85 billion devices are going to be sold, and more importantly, 5G devices as many as 225 million.
Hitting the top of its revenue range next year would give Qualcomm its first sales expansion in 6 quarters.
Shares of Expedia down 13.5% after a decline in revenue at its vacation rental business. Third quarter results missed estimates, and that has Expedia lowering its forecast for the year.
Shares of Roku are down 14% in early trading. Third quarter results and forecasts for the fourth quarter both fell short of estimates.
And shares of Fossil Group down nearly 30%. The watchmaker posting a surprise loss and lowering its outlook for the year. Futures this morning are trading higher, and straight ahead we have the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg.
All right, thanks, Karen. It's 6:07 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr has more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Thank you very much, Nathan. And aide to Vice President Pence is expected to testify today in the closed-door impeachment hearings. Jennifer Williams was on the president's July 25th call with Ukraine. It comes as William Taylor, the top U.S. diplomat in Ukraine, told lawmakers that President Trump was withholding military aid for Ukraine unless the country's president agreed publicly to investigate Democrats. Taylor would testify publicly in the inquiry next week. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff.
So those open hearings will be an opportunity for the American people to evaluate the witnesses for themselves, to make their own determinations about the credibility of the witnesses, but also to learn firsthand about the facts of the president's misconduct.
President Trump slammed House Democrats after the news the inquiry was going public.
Corrupt politicians, Nancy Pelosi, and shifty Adam Schiff, and the crooked media have launched the deranged, delusional, destructive, and hyper-partisan impeachment witch hunt.
The president spoke last night in Monroe, Louisiana, rallying support for the state's GOP candidate, Eddie Rispone, who's going up against Democratic incumbent John Bel Edwards for governor. Rudy Giuliani said his work with Ukraine, now at the center of the inquiry, was done solely as a defense attorney for President Trump. That undercuts the administration's claims that the former mayor was advancing U.S. foreign policy. Giuliani had previously denied bypassing official diplomatic channels in dealing with the government of Ukrainian President Zelensky. Jeff Sessions is said to announce today that he plans to run for the Alabama Senate seat that he vacated in 2017 to become Attorney General. Two former Twitter employees are accused of using their access at the social media giant to spy for Saudi Arabia. One of the men, a U.S. citizen, is under arrest. The men were allegedly recruited to gather information on critics of the Saudi regime. Former Homeland Security Advisor Tom Bossert.
This ought to serve as a wake-up call to not only Twitter, but all the big tech companies. They've become large and powerful, and they are up against highly complex spy operations.
Twitter says it is cooperating with the investigation. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thanks. 6:09 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashower.
Nathan, it's a new season, a lot of new players, but it's the same old Knicks. Worst record in the NBA last season, and again, so far this year, they're 1-7, lost by 20 at Detroit. Andre Drummond, 27 points to the Pistons. Tony Snell had 24. He shot 9 for 9, 6 of them three-pointers. Pistons shot 56% of the game. Julius Randle led the Knicks with 20. At the Garden, Rangers with 5 different goal scorers, 35 saves from Henrik Lundqvist. They got back to 500, a 5-1 win over Detroit. Mike Anderson's the new coach at St. John's, replacing Chris Mullin. His first game was a 30-point blowout of Mercer. Mustafa Heron with 25 points. The ACC starting the season with conference games, so already Virginia at Syracuse. First time the defending national champs have started the next season on the road since 1967, and Virginia won 48-34. The Orange shot 24%. In 2018, the Giants had the second pick of the draft and the Jets picked third. Giants could have taken Sam Darnold to be their quarterback. They instead took Saquon Barkley. They left Darnold for the Jets. And Sunday, the two teams meet, and Giants coach Pat Shurmur was asked about Darnold.
I see an outstanding young quarterback who's, he can play, and he can help his team win games. And so that's what I see.
What did you think about him coming out?
We had a high opinion of him. Thought he was an outstanding player. Well-accomplished player that we were pretty certain he was going to have an outstanding career.
Giants, of course, drafted Daniel Jones a year later. Both young quarterbacks making their share of mistakes on teams that are combined 3-14. The Giants will be without tight end Evan Ingram Sunday, injured foot. Jets hope to have Le'Veon Bell despite a knee injury. With a Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashower. Nathan?
All right, John, thank you. And in other sports news, we're getting word of a possible buyer for Derek Jeter's Players Tribune. Sources tell us Minute Media is in talks to buy the former Yankee captain's website. We're told the media company is in exclusive negotiations with the Players Tribune, though there is no guarantee those discussions will lead to a deal. S&P futures higher by 13.5 points. Dow futures a gain of 152. NASDAQ futures up 43. This is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
It's another Thursday morning. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick, and relax with 365 beautiful beaches.
So yes, sir, what would you like to have?
Fly from London Gatwick to Antigua with British Airways from £223 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
At Argos, get them the toys they're dreaming of this Christmas. Save 20% when you spend £20 or more on toys with code TOYS20, including top brands like Peppa Pig and Lego. Enjoy same-day home delivery 7 days a week. With Argos, you're good to go. Offer ends the 12th of November, subject to availability. Exclusions apply. Delivery conditions apply. Order by 6 p.m, 90% UK coverage.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and V Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Ladies and gents, may I introduce a magical number? 25! Oh yes, 25 UK millionaires guaranteed in this Friday's Euro Millions.
Euro Millions, celebrating 25 years of the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
From Bloomberg Television, here's Heidi Stroud-Watts.
Have we reached the beginning of the end when it comes to global rate cuts? And if that's the case, what comes next? Carissa McDonough is the Chief Fixed Income Strategist of People's United Advisors. Carissa, great to have you. I posed that question to you. Are we getting to the end of efficacy when it comes to rate strategy? And if so, what comes next? Is the fiscal side really ready and able to do the heavy lifting going into 2020?
I think everything that we heard in the prior report stands true. There are more monetary policymakers saying the fiscal side of the house really has to start picking up its load. The monetary policy has done really everything it can. The Fed was even, I think, surprised at the end of last year when it over-tightened. The bond market said, the market can't handle that level of tightening because there's no fiscal policy to pick up on the other side. The issue is monetary policy can't really cure growth problems. The growth concerns, the uncertainty, that really comes into play with fiscal policy. So what we're looking for is coordinated fiscal policy either in the U.S. or globally, but just remember this operates with an extremely long and variable lag time. So to see that coming through into actual economic data will still take some time.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. This update's brought to you by IBKR and CME Group. The new micro E-mini futures contracts are available at IBKR at the lowest commissions. Learn more at IBKR.com/CME Mini. Bloomberg Daybreak is out on customer terminals, bringing you all the news you need to start your day. Let's get a check at the latest headlines with Hannah George at the Bloomberg Daybreak desk. Good morning, Hannah.
Good morning, Karen. The US and China agreed to roll back tariffs on each other's goods in phases. That's according to China, which says both sides should withdraw existing levies in the same proportion simultaneously. Rudy Giuliani is stirring up the impeachment probe, tweeting that his controversial work with Ukraine was done solely as a defense attorney for President Trump. The statement undercuts White House claims that he was advancing US foreign policy. 2 former Twitter employees have been charged by the US for helping Saudi Arabia spy on dissidents by hacking into their accounts. The ex-employees were allegedly bribed to mine for data. And Disney's move into streaming will be in focus when the company reports earnings today. Investors will be looking for all the details they can get on the November 12th launch of Disney+. For all the news you need to start your day, check out Daybreak on your mobile phone on the Bloomberg Anywhere app. Karen.
right, Hannah, thank you. S&P futures are up about 14 points. Dow futures up 152. NASDAQ futures up 43. The DAX in Germany is up 0.7%. 10-year Treasury down 15.30 seconds. Yield 1.87%. Yield on the 2-year 1.64%. NYMEX crude oil up 1.2% or 68 cents at 57.03 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.7% or $10.30 at 14.8280 an ounce. The euro 1.1087 against the dollar. The yen 109.15. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, the White House is adding to its communications operations as House Democrats prepare for the first public hearings in its impeachment inquiry set for next week. The first witness expected to appear is the top U.S. diplomat in Ukraine, William Taylor. He has told lawmakers in private that he understood President Trump proposed a quid pro quo with Ukraine regarding U.S. security assistance for commitment to investigate Joe Biden and the Democrats. President Trump slammed House Democrats after word that the impeachment inquiry will go public. During a rally in Monroe, Louisiana, Trump called it a hyper-partisan impeachment witch hunt. In the NBA, the Knicks lost. The Warriors and Wizards also lost. In the NHL, the Rangers won. Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
Michael, thank you. 6:20 on Wall Street, and we're live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. Good morning, I'm John Tucker. Well, against the backdrop of political chaos, we're going to hear from another central bank this morning. Dan Hansen, the Bloomberg senior UK economist, is in our London studio to preview the Bank of England policy decision. Dan, thanks for being with us. With Britain heading into election, there's pretty much nothing they can do at this point, I would imagine.
Oh, morning, John. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, we expect the bank to stand pat today, keeping rates on hold. We expect a unanimous decision as well. The focus is really going to be on the forecasts. How big a downgrade to the growth outlook will the Bank of England make? We expect them to push down forecasts next year and year after, and also that's going to push down on the inflation forecast as well. But really, it's a steady as you go meeting. As you say, the political backdrop is so uncertain that the bank it's going to be steady as you go.
Yeah, if I'm a businessman in the UK, do I invest in the business? Do I stockpile? I mean, there is so much uncertainty. Doesn't that beg for a rate cut?
Yeah, it's moving. Well, the debate in the UK is moving in that direction. Business investment has essentially slumped over the past 18 months, and the only part of the economy that's carried on chugging along has been the British consumer. Now, the debate about rate cuts, it's a difficult one, because what we know is coming down the line, and you've seen this on the headlines this morning, is that fiscal policy is going to be loosened, and potentially quite substantially next year and beyond. When we get a new government. So you've got a weakness in business investment, and that could potentially turn around if there is finally a Brexit deal. And you've got this loosening of fiscal policy. So right now, yes, there is that uncertainty, but potentially if the election is able to break the deadlock, there's potential for a bit of upside in the economy, we think, next year.
Well, what's the inflation outlook right now? And we have to take into account that there are different reasons, different types of inflation, those related to currency and those related to demand.
Absolutely. So at the moment, inflation's running below the Bank of England's 2% target, and we actually think it's likely to stay there, certainly in the near term and potentially over next year. That's mainly as a result of what we think will be a slightly stronger pound, and that's assuming that there is a Brexit deal. But yeah, at the moment, I'd say underlying inflation, I should say, in the economy is still quite tepid. It's picking up. Wage growth is picking up, but it's not at the levels you'd expect to see in the medium term that would see the inflation hit 2% consistently at a 2 and 3 year horizon.
Is everybody on the same page at the Bank of England? You mentioned you didn't expect any dissent or anything like that, but how would you break down the potential doves and hawks?
So at the moment, we think, as you rightly said there, that we think there'll be a unanimous decision today. What you've seen recently, though, is a slight breakout and in a dovish direction by both Michael Saunders and Gertjan Vliega. They've been talking about the potential for rate cuts, even if no deal Brexit is avoided, and even if there is a Brexit deal. And that comes on the back of the point that you made earlier, that it's possible that even if there is a Brexit deal, business investment doesn't rebound. And they're also clearly worried about the global backdrop. And the UK is a very open economy, so a weak global economy spills over to the UK. So at the moment, unanimity, but going forward, there's potential for splits to occur. We definitely think that's right.
Okay, let's leave it with the next question. What's your base case for a Brexit? Tread lightly with this one.
So, said with not a huge degree of confidence, but I'd say our base case is that you first have to look at the election. And the polls, at least at the moment, suggest that Boris Johnson will return to power, possibly with a small majority. That then leads us to getting his Brexit deal through Parliament. And then going forward, we think, a free trade deal in the long term. But that's, as I say, not said with a high degree of confidence.
Okay. Dan Hansen, Bloomberg senior UK economist from our London bureau. And again, the decision from the Bank of England, 7 o'clock Wall Street time. Of course, we'll bring that to you live. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. The early market indicators are pointing to more gains at the open on Wall Street, but yesterday was kind of a lackluster session. Stocks drifted after reports that any signing of a partial trade deal between the U.S. and China won't happen until at least December. Dow futures up 148 this morning, NASDAQ futures up 43, S&P futures are up 14. We'll get another round of earnings today, including those from Disney after the closing bell. Before that, we also hear from SeaWorld, Keurig Dr. Pepper, and others. The weekly snapshot of jobless claims is out before the opening bell this morning. Healthy U.S. sales of the RAV4 and the Corolla are helping Toyota, which posted quarterly profit that beat analyst estimates. The maker of Prius hybrids and Tacoma trucks joins Tesla, Ford, and Volkswagen in reporting better than expected results, even as global car sales sputter. In Europe today, the markets had a positive session. Stocks also rose in Asia. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Why has We just got back from a beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. We dropped off our Christmas shopping at the hotel. Then it was off to be spellbound at the Theatre Royal Bath. There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
It's another Thursday morning. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick to enjoy a warm Bayesian welcome.
How are you doing? Enjoying the sunshine?
Fly from London Gatwick to Barbados with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £699 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
At Argos, get them the toys they're dreaming of this Christmas. Save 20% when you spend £20 or more on toys with code TOYS20, including top brands like Peppa Pig and Lego. Enjoy same-day home delivery 7 days a week. With Argos, you're good to go. Offer ends the 12th of November, subject to availability. Exclusions apply. Delivery conditions apply. Order by 6 p.m. 90% UK coverage.
Oh, a decent drill would make DIY so much easier.
Whether you're laying flooring or fitting shelves, head to the B&Q Tool Shop. Get hands-on in store with our wide range of drills, including the Bosch Universal Impact Combi Drill for just £80. The B&Q Tool Shop. You can do it when you B&Q it.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg, whose star seems to be rising in the state of Iowa.
I've advanced past roughly 20 of my competitors, which is not bad for somebody nobody had heard of in January. There are, admittedly, a few more big hills to climb.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour from WNYC Studios on TuneIn today.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York, Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960 to the country, Sirius XM Channel 119, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
And it's 6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We're just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures and European stocks are gaining after another step forward in trade negotiations between the U.S. and China. For the very latest, we go live now to Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
And Karen, China's Commerce Ministry says both sides have conditionally agreed to remove tariffs in phases, potentially providing a roadmap toward de-escalating the trade war. A spokesman says if China and the U.S. reach a Phase 1 deal, both sides should roll back existing tariffs in the same proportion simultaneously based on the content of the agreement. Now, separately, China's Xinhua news agency is saying that Beijing is considering removing curbs on U.S. poultry imports. Live in New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. In Europe, we get a policy decision and updated economic forecast from the Bank of England today. The central bank is expected to keep rates on hold ahead of elections next month.
In Germany, we have data showing industrial production continues to worsen. German output fell 0.6% in September, with manufacturing fueling that decline.
Earnings out of Germany don't paint a much better picture. Shares of Commerzbank are little changed after the bank cut its outlook for the year. The lender says negative rates and higher taxes are hurting income.
In Italy, shares of Unicredit are up more than 6%. The bank posted a 26% gain in profit as income from trading and fees offset weak lending margins.
Here in the U.S., shares of Roku are down more than 13% in early trading. Third quarter results and forecasts for the fourth quarter both fell short of estimates.
Shares of Fossil Group down nearly 30%. The watchmaker posting a surprise loss and lowering its outlook for the year.
And Qualcomm is higher by more than 6% in early trading after the chipmaker's outlook topped predictions. Here with more is Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
Its report indicates that smartphone demand may be picking up after a prolonged slump. Investors have been waiting to see whether Qualcomm, now in its fifth year of revenue declines, can parlay its claim of leadership in 5G wireless technology into sales growth. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Charlie, thank you. And we do have this headline crossing the Bloomberg. SeaWorld Entertainment naming Sergio Rivera as its chief executive officer. Right now, S&P futures are higher, up 13 points. Dow futures up 145. NASDAQ futures up 41. The DAX in Germany is up 0.7%. 10-year Treasury down 15/30 seconds. The yield 1.87%. And the yield on the 2-year, 1.64%. NYMEX crude oil up 1.4% or 78 cents at $57.13 a barrel. And COMEX gold is down 0.6% or $9.10 at $14.84.10 an ounce. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg.
Thank you, Karen. 6:33 on Wall Street. And Michael Barr has more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Rudy Giuliani says his work with the Ukraine was done solely as a defense attorney for President Donald Trump. Bloomberg's Ed Baxter has the story.
It came in the form of a tweet. The investigation I conducted concerning 2016 Ukrainian collusion and corruption was done solely as a defense attorney to defend my client against false charges that kept changing as one after another were disproven. But now this seems to undercut the administration claims that he was advancing U.S. foreign policy. Lawmakers have been interviewing current and former administration officials in efforts to clarify the nature of Giuliani's interactions with the U.S. and Ukrainian officials. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
President Trump traveled to Monroe, Louisiana to muster votes for Republican Eddie Risponi in the governor's race against incumbent Democrat John Bel Edwards. Reacting to the impeachment inquiry, President Trump says his critics working with the media have launched a destructive, hyper-partisan witch hunt.
The radical left Democrats are trying to rip our nation apart.
The top U.S. diplomat in Ukraine has told lawmakers in private that he understood President Trump proposed a quid pro quo with Ukraine. Now he's expected to repeat that testimony in the impeachment inquiry's initial public hearings next week. The diplomat, William Taylor, will be the first to testify. President Trump is expected to hire a pair of new aides dedicated to responding to the House's expansion of the impeachment investigation. According to two people familiar with the plan, former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi and Tony Sageg, a former Treasury Department spokesman, are expected to join the White House communications team. Under a strong security presence, a remote farming community in northern Mexico is preparing to hold the first funeral today for some of the 9 American women and children killed by drug cartel gunmen. Brian LeBaron, a relative of the victim, says Mexico's president should accept President Trump's offer to help wage war on Mexican drug cartels.
The president of Mexico should put his pride aside and accept the international help.
At least 1,000 visitors are expected for the funerals today. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right. Thanks, Michael. 6:35 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashauer.
Nathan, it was New York versus Detroit. Knicks and Pistons, Rangers and Red Wings. The Knicks lost 122-102. They trailed by only 2 in the third quarter when Markieff Morris, who was playing against his twin brother, hit a three-pointer, was fouled, flagrant foul on Julius Randle, so a free throw plus possession. The Pistons scored on that. Knicks coach David Fizdale on the sequence.
That's a tough one. It's tough to weather a 6-point play. That's actually the first time I've ever seen that since I've been coaching. So, but, you know, we made a lot of mistakes defensively, but these are things that we can correct.
We'll see. Knicks and NBA worst 1-7. They've lost 8 straight to Detroit. They're in Dallas tomorrow facing their old friend Kristaps Porzingis at the Garden. Rangers 3 goals in the second period, 2 more in the third. 5-1 win over the Red Wings. This is a young Ranger team with a 37-year-old goalie, Henrik Lundqvist.
I think tonight we did a much better job of doing that. Trust our structure, and then we have the skill to use it when there's an opportunity and not force it. And tonight I think we just worked hard. We wait for their mistakes, and then we took advantage of it. So it's great to see we learned from last game where it kind of was the opposite going on for us.
The Rangers play again tonight at Carolina College. Basketball season opening win for St. John's. And new coach Mike Anderson by 30 over Mercer. Virginia opened defense of its national championship, a 48-34 win at Syracuse. The Orange shot 24%. Rutgers looking for a new coach. Talking to a former coach, Greg Schiano, Jersey native, coached the Scarlet Knights 11 years. They won 11-2 one season. Reportedly, he's interested in returning, but only if the school improves its facilities and pays its assistant coaches more. With a Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashauer. Nathan?
Okay, John, thank you. And coming up today, we get earnings from about 40 companies in the S&P 500, including Walt Disney. Here with a preview is Bloomberg's Larry Kofsky.
Operating income for the division is expected to be down 10% from a year ago, partly due to tough year-over-year comparisons. Bloomberg Intelligence says the integration of Fox's media assets will rub salt in the wound, squeezing earnings by about 45 cents a share, down from 60 cents in the previous quarter. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Larry, thank you. And Bloomberg customers can check the full earnings calendar on the terminal by typing ACDR GO. It's just before 6:38 on Wall Street.
The following is an editorial from Bloomberg Opinion.
2 Soviet-born associates of Rudy Giuliani are charged with funneling $325,000 in foreign money into a super PAC supporting Donald Trump's re-election campaign. Their indictment should serve as a warning about foreign interference in U.S. elections. It also proves the need for a functioning federal election commission. After resignation in August, the 6-seat commission is down to just 3 members. The commission needs 4 to authorize investigations. Trump has made 1 nomination, but Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who has fast-tracked dozens of federal court nominees, has dragged his feet on this one. He should immediately schedule hearings on the nomination. Then, he and Senate Minority Leader Charles Schumer should put forth 5 more qualified nominees, enabling a clean sweep of old members, all of whose terms have nominally expired. America's elections are under attack. Leaving the FEC impotent in the face of such threats is grossly irresponsible. This editorial was written by the Bloomberg Opinion Editorial Board. I'm David Shipley. For more Bloomberg Opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPI and Go on the Bloomberg Terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
You can hear Bloomberg Opinion editorials every weekday at this time, and terminal customers can read more at OPIN Go. 6:39 on Wall Street. That's time for the Bloomberg Small Business Report live with John Tucker. Good morning, John.
And Nathan, maybe your only experience with cork is opening a wine bottle. Just an assumption on my part.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now you're not going to fight back against that, are you?
No, not at all.
Well, now there's a small business that has people rethinking this sustainable material. The Tree Bag Company is selling high-end handbags and wallets made of cork.
Oh.
They're tougher than leather.
The cork is very soft. It's extremely light. It is very smooth. The texture is very smooth. It's waterproof.
Romanthy Wajacina started the Tree Bag Company out of her home in Westchester County, New York in 2017.
It is not like the cork wine stopper where you can dig your nail inside it.
Well, with a background in fashion and business and a passion for sustainable products, cork was a natural. It's harvested from trees in Portugal, and the stuff grows back. The bag sold only online with a price tag of anywhere from $15 to over $200. This busy mom is determined to uncork the potential of cork.
Oh, nice one.
That's your small business report, Nathan.
All right, John, thank you. As long as it doesn't get stuck in the bottle. Appreciate that. S&P futures higher by almost 13 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak. Good morning.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
It's another Thursday morning, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and explore tropical rainforests. Fly from London Gatwick to Costa Rica with British Airways.
from £218 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
At Argos, get them the toys they're dreaming of this Christmas. Save 20% when you spend £20 or more on toys with code TOYS20, including top brands like Peppa Pig and Lego. Enjoy same-day home delivery 7 days a week. With Argos, you're good to go. Offer ends the 12th of November, subject to availability. Exclusions apply. Delivery conditions apply. Order by 6 p.m. 90% UK coverage.
Teaching shapes lives. Becoming a teacher means a career of opportunities. You could head a subject department or work towards school leadership. And with a minimum starting salary of £24,000 to £30,000, teaching has never been so rewarding. Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Search Get Into Teaching. Starting salary dependent on location.
London. Switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Rainy, 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 rainy.
Sergey, why are you in such good mood?
It's raining.
And?
Rain means we take meerpups to cinema. And cinema means they'll be entertained.
Ah, and entertained means they're also quiet for a couple of hours. Oh, let's go. Enjoy more time together with 2-for-1 cinema tickets from Meerkat Movies with the Meerkat app when you buy through Compare the Market. Qualifying purchases, Tuesdays or Wednesdays, participating cinemas, 2 standard tickets only, cheapest free. T's and C's apply.
What if you could keep up with cable news even when you're on the go? With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to MSNBC live without any commercial interruptions. All of the news, none of the ads. Listen live on TuneIn Premium today.
Want to know what's happening in right now? The latest headlines are just a tap away with Fox News Talk on TuneIn. When news breaks, get up-to-the-minute coverage on developing stories from around the world. Plus, hear all the Fox shows you watch on your TV. Listen to Fox News Talk around the clock on TuneIn.
Network of news and financial information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Funerals begin today in a small Mexican village for the 9 American women and children killed by drug cartel gunmen. Mexican soldiers are providing security. Diplomat William Taylor, who says there was a quid pro quo for President Trump to release U.S. military aid to Ukraine, will be the first witness when the House impeachment inquiry begins public hearings next week. The president rallying last night in Louisiana, supporting businessman Eddie Risponi's campaign for governor against the incumbent Democrat John Bel Edwards.
Eddie is tough on crime, strong on borders, and he'll work with ICE and Border Patrol to get violent criminals off the streets. We'll bring them back to their country, ideally, or we'll put them in jail where they belong.
Early voting in Louisiana ends Saturday ahead of the November 16 election. China says negotiators for Washington and Beijing have agreed to cancel tariff hikes depending on how trade negotiations progress. That sent U.S. stock futures higher overnight. I'm Michael Toscano.
If you're at the top of your profession, you're listening.
Are those gains all going to the elite?
Bloomberg Surveillance.
Does it spread beyond manufacturing?
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell. Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. It is 6:47 on Wall Street. Futures higher this morning. We go to the First Word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bill Maloney. Bill, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. That's right. U.S. futures are climbing as the U.S. and China agreed to roll back tariffs as they work towards a trade deal. Dow futures currently up 144 points. S&P's gained 13, while NASDAQ futures rise by 39. The U.S. 10-year yield at 1.88%. Gold is down 7. Shanghai was a little changed overnight, while European markets are climbing, led by gains in Germany and Italy. And note the Bank of England rate decision is at 7 a.m. Back in the U.S. on the economic front at 8:30, initial jobs claims. And after the bell last night, Qualcomm gave a strong forecast. Shares are up 6% in the pre-market. Baidu beat on revenue, and Roku lowered its forecast. Its shares are down 13% in the pre-market. In deal news, Nielsen has spun off its Global Connect business, and HP Inc. confirmed that Xerox did make a takeover takeover offer. Wrapping things up, Aircastle is raised to neutral at Goldman Sachs, Expedia cut to neutral at Piper, and Mylan cut to equal weight over at Morgan Stanley. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Karen?
Bill, thank you. To hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, Rudy Giuliani says his work with Ukraine was done solely as the defense attorney for President Trump. It seems to undercut the administration's claim that he was advancing U.S. foreign policy. Democrats are preparing to launch public impeachment hearings next week, intended to bring life to closed-door testimony and lay out a convincing narrative of presidential misconduct by Donald Trump. First to testify will be the top diplomat in Ukraine, William Taylor, whose private testimony was made public in transcripts. Taylor told investigators his understanding that there was blatant quid pro quo with Trump holding up military aid to Ukraine as it faced threats from Russia. In the NBA, the Knicks lost, the Warriors and Wizards also lost. In the NHL, the Rangers won. Finally, from Daybreak on the Bloomberg, climate strike is the phrase of the year. Collins Dictionary picked a selection of phrases that reflect what they call these strange, anxiety-inducing times. The use of climate strike in the database of language rose 100-fold between 2018 and 2019. Nathan, it also added non-binary, deep fake, and influencer.
Yeah, a lot of political words in there, so I'll try to steer clear of that. But when you mention quid pro quo, Michael.
Yes.
And you talk about strange, anxiety-inducing times. A lot of contenders is all I'm going to say. A lot of contenders for phrase of the year, I suppose you could say.
Yes, kind of like being a Jets fan.
Yeah.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg News.
Should be a heck of a draft for them. Thank you, Michael. We're live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. We're at 6:50 on Wall Street. Time to check what's going on in D.C. Some of the top stories in our nation's capital include House Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff announcing the first public impeachment hearings to begin next week. President Trump campaigning in Louisiana after a tough election night for Republicans. And the White House confirming Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan will come to the White House in Washington this coming Wednesday. Also making news, the transcript of closed-door testimony from the diplomat who will open next week's open impeachment hearings. For all the latest, we're joined by Bloomberg Washington reporter Kathleen Hunter. And there is, as always, a lot to get to when it comes to the impeachment story, Kate. The testimony from Ambassador William Taylor, the top Ukraine envoy, Democrats have called it a smoking gun. What is it exactly that Taylor described based on what's in the transcript?
Well, Taylor, I think part of why Democrats have been so adamant about this testimony, characterizing it as a smoking gun, is because we now know that Taylor took very, studious notes and wrote down a lot of this. And so, contemporaneously as it was happening. And so I think that makes it, in Democrats' eyes at least, more reliable. And what he described is sort of this ongoing effort to link a meeting potentially at the White House with President Trump, between President Trump and President Zelensky of Ukraine, linking that meeting with the investigation of the Bidens, and which we know that the Trump administration has been pushing for, or was pushing for. We saw that in the transcript, and so I think that is a very clear link that Bill Taylor spelled out, and we got more details about that yesterday. And I certainly think that helps bolster Democrats' case that this was some kind of quid pro quo.
It is interesting to see this sort of narrative develop from the transcripts that, Democrats have talked about the timeline in terms of the release of military aid, how it was brought out. But it seems as though, at least on the Ukrainian side, the idea of having a meeting with the president was a much more important for them on their side.
Absolutely, and I think that's what we kind of heard, the aspect of the testimony released yesterday from Bill Taylor that stood out to me the most is that perhaps, the White House has pushed back against this idea of the military aid being tied to that, and, even suggested that perhaps the Ukrainians didn't know about the military aid at the time that the phone conversation between Trump and Zelensky occurred. However, this new testimony from Taylor, this testimony we're now seeing from Taylor, indicates that perhaps, as you said, this meeting at the White House that did occur between Trump and Zelensky Zelensky might have been really at the top of the Ukrainians' agenda because it would have given the new president of Ukraine a big boost in his standing. And so that to me seems like the clearest linkage, the clearest chain of events for Democrats to focus on going forward. And so I think we're likely to see that.
As for Republicans, it seems as though they're focusing a lot more on the testimony from former Ukraine Special Envoy Kurt Volker. Why is that?
I think perhaps just because it's the lesser damaging testimony. I think Taylor's testimony is, pretty damaging in what he lays out. And I think with Volker, he doesn't talk about an explicit quid pro quo. And I think that is in some ways, reassuring to Republicans, or definitely less unsettling to Republicans. So, of course, they would focus on that.
And it's significant, I suppose, now that the public hearings have been announced, that the first witness that we're going to see and hear is Ambassador Taylor.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that, looking back at when Taylor testified behind closed doors, we didn't know all the details that we now know, having seen the transcript. But there were several Republicans, Jamie Raskin of Maryland, several Democrats, Jamie Raskin of Maryland was one of them, who used the term smoking gun to describe the testimony. And so I think it's not surprising that Democrats would put Taylor front and center and try to open up with him, because I think that people will likely be tuning in during those first day of those hearings. And I think that it makes sense for Democrats to want to put the person forward who makes the clearest and most clean-cut case.
How significant is this tweet that we saw from Rudy Giuliani, that he was working in Ukraine on behalf of the president as a personal lawyer, as opposed to kind of doing back-channel policy?
I don't know that it ends up mattering a whole ton given some of these other developments, but it certainly doesn't help the administration's efforts to characterize Giuliani as someone who is working to advance U.S. foreign policy in Ukraine. That definitely undercuts and goes crosswise of that White House message. And so I think that, it's yet another setback really for the White House.
And on the schedule today, as far as closed-door sessions, the former National Security Advisor John Bolton is scheduled to testify. Is there a question as to whether he'll show up?
Yeah, there's been a question all along, and I think if I had to put money on it, at this point, given, just what we've seen this week so far with, AIDS being canceled, testimony being canceled at the last minute, I think, I'd likely wager that he doesn't show up. The word from his attorney has been that he wouldn't appear voluntarily. And so I think that certainly Democrats are going to want to continue to press to hear from Bolton, because he's someone that reportedly, in the accounts of other witnesses, expressed concern about some of what was going on, pretty strong concern. And so I think there's going to be a continued effort to try to hear from him, but I don't know that it'll necessarily be today.
Bloomberg Washington reporter Kathleen Hunter, thank you as always, and you can read much more on Bloomberg.com or on the Bloomberg Terminal, and follow all the latest on Bloomberg Radio in Washington, Bloomberg 99.1 and 105.7 FM HD2. 656 on Wall Street.
The following commentary is from Bloomberg Opinion.
Do the early states matter? I'm Jonathan Bernstein, a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. Late surges ahead of the Iowa caucuses are pretty normal, but does it really matter who wins in Iowa and New Hampshire? There are basically three stories, and it's very hard to know which is true. The first is about momentum. Doing well in early states can generate media attention and therefore a surge in voter support. If that's the case, then any winner in Iowa could catch fire and win the nomination. The second story is about the absence of momentum. If that's the case, then Joe Biden could retain his support and his current polling lead, regardless of what happens in the first two states. Let's call the third story, it depends. If the structure of the race is already set before Iowa, the order of the primaries and caucuses won't matter much. But if the situation is fluid, then media or party-driven momentum after the early states matters. And we won't really know which story applies until after Iowa and New Hampshire. I'm Jonathan Bernstein. For more opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg Terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
And Bloomberg Opinion editorials can be heard every weekday at this time, and terminal customers can read more at OPIN Go. And futures this morning are higher. S&P futures up about 12 points, Dow futures up 136, and NASDAQ futures up 38. 10-year Treasury down 16/30 seconds, yield 1.87%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.63%. NYMEX crude oil up 1.2% or 69 cents at $57.02 a barrel, and COMEX gold is down 0.6%. 1% at $14.84.90 an ounce. Bloomberg Surveillance is straight ahead with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz. For Nathan Hager, I'm Karen Moscow, and this is Bloomberg.
It's another Thursday morning. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and enjoy stunning white sand and crystal blue sea. Fly from London Gatwick to the Maldives with British Airways from £300 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Cold Thursday mornings like this are cruel. You cough, you splutter, so does your car. Its battery dead, killed by an icy claw. Will anyone stand up to winter? Yes, you. Come to Halfords. We fit new batteries on the spot from just £15, and we're open late 7 days a week. See halfords.com for opening hours. Here in Chiswick. Ready for the cold snap? Ready for anything. Halfords, for life's journeys.
Batteries sold separately. Selected vehicles only in most stores.
Financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
I think the U.S. is going in for a couple of years of very, very strong growth.
The deficit by early in the next decade will start to become a real problem for the markets.
Finance.
The consumer is really strong right now.
We don't realize how good times are now.
Investment.
The biggest problem that people have in investing in stocks is that they get out of the market.
It's not supposed to be easy. Anyone who finds it easy is stupid.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
From New York City for our audience worldwide, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Coming up on the program, equities rallying, bond markets drop as trade optimism builds once again. China says the US is ready to agree to tariff rollback if a deal is ultimately reached, as reports indicate a summit between President Trump and Xi might slip to December. Live from the Bloomberg Year Ahead Summit here in New York City. Hello Thursday. Here is your Thursday morning price action with equity futures positive 11 points on the S&P 500, up 0.4%. In the bond market, Treasuries lower yields higher, up 5 basis points on a 10-year to 187. And in foreign exchange, the state of play for you in G10, the dollar against the majors weaker against the euro by around about 0.1%. Alongside me, Tom Keene and Bloomberg's Lisa Abramowitz. Mr. Keene, good morning to you.
Good morning. Melt-up continues, and it's really correlated. What impresses me the most is the bond market, higher yields that came on in the last hour and a half.
A little bit of happy talk. A little bit of happy talk giving us a little bit of a lift, and plenty of happy talk through the day at this Year Ahead Summit here in New York, Lisa.
Yeah, if you wanted to know what was going to happen for the rest of the 12 months, you just have to go to this. Sheryl Sandberg, Susan Rice, Sarah Jessica Parker, who will tell you lots of things about investing, I'm sure, and Jim Coulter, to talk about everything from healthcare to the future of tech for the next 12 months. So it'll be a really prescient, evidently, next couple of hours.
Looking forward to that. We're going to be talking about the markets through the day, of course. A lift to this equity market this morning off the back of some comments from a Chinese official who said the following.
Cash?
We're going to ask Max Kettner in just a moment.
Okay, thank you.
I think you should have done that about a year ago.
Let me just get to the quote of the morning, shall we? From a Chinese official saying the following. In the past 2 weeks, top negotiators had serious constructive discussions and agreed to remove additional tariffs in phrases as progress is made on the agreement. If China-US reach a phase one deal, both sides should roll back existing additional tariffs. I should emphasize here, any agreement on tariff rollback is ultimately still conditional on a phase one deal being reached. And Tom, a phase one deal still hasn't been agreed
Exactly, and what is so critical here, and I read carefully the comments, again, these comments, folks, are not managed or massaged. They're really out of Beijing and straightforward. The Chinese are looking sequential. They're looking at this not as a one-off tariff rollback, but they verbiage a sequential rollback. And I would suggest the Americans seem to be a long way from that.
No comment from the president yet. No comment from this administration here in the United States. I did mention Max Kettler's name, so let's bring him in, shall we? XSBC's multi-asset strategist. He joins us here in New York City. Good morning to you, Max.
Good morning.
Going to get to your underweight equity call, which I think should be the focus of this conversation in just a moment. But first of all, your interpretation of what's happening here with the negotiations between the US and China. We still haven't negotiated a phase one agreement, yet this market is behaving as if we have.
Here we go. I mean, you just mentioned it when you say, good morning, there's 3 people doing the happy talk. I'm guessing I was invited to do the sort of opposite. And I don't think you're going to invite a German strategist to hear some happy talk, really. So there we go. I'm going to be a bit more dismal in the next couple of minutes. The only thing really I understood from what you were reading out loud is about 27 subjunctives and ifs and ifs and ifs, right? So the problem for me is,